It is said that love is blind, yet those who drink from its cup often say the opposite. Love, they say, gives them clear vision, strength of character, and lightness of heart. Yes, love is a strange beast, but not nearly so strange as life itself. There was once a king who had 3 daughters. All lovely maidens, but the youngest, Psyche, excelled her sisters so greatly that beside them she seemed a very goddess consorting with mere mortals. The 3 beautiful maidens dreamed what their future husbands would look like. The fame of her surpassing beauty spread over the earth, and everywhere man journeyed to gaze upon her with wonder and adoration, and to do her homage as though she were in truth one of the immortals. They would even say that Venus herself could not equal this mortal. As they thronged in ever-growing number to worship her loveliness, no one anymore gave a thought to Venus herself. As always, when she was in trouble, she turned for help to her son, the beautiful winged youth whom some call Cupid and others Love. Against whose arrows there is no defense, neither in heaven nor on the earth. She told him her wrongs, and as always he was ready to do her beat-dog. And so no doubt he would have done. As he looked upon her, it was as if he had shot one of his arrows into his own heart. What happened, however, was not what she counted on. Psyche did not fall in love with a horrible wretch. She did not fall in love at all. Still more strange, no one fell in love with her. But Psyche's father was indeed very much worried about his daughter's situation. Her father was unaware that the lack of suitors was because of Cupid, refused to awaken the love for Psyche in any man, since he was in love with the girl. This was, of course, most disturbing to her parents. Her father finally traveled to an oracle of Apollo to ask his advice on how to get a good husband. The god answered him, but his words were terrible. Psyche, dressed in deepest mourning, must be set on the summit of a rock hill and left alone, and that there her destined husband, a fearful winged serpent, stronger than the gods themselves, would come to her and make her his wife. The misery of all, when Psyche's father brought back the lamentable news, can be imagined. They dressed the maiden as though for her death, and carried her to the hill with greater sorrowing than if it had been to her tomb. But Psyche herself kept her courage. They went in despairing grief, leaving the lovely helpless creature to meet her doomed alone, and they shut themselves in their palace to mourn all their days for her. On the high hilltop in the darkness, Psyche sat, waiting for she knew not what terror. There, as she wept and trembled, a soft breath of air came through the stillness of her. The gentle it lifted her up. She woke beside a bright river, and on its bank was a mansion stately and beautiful as though built for a god, with pillars of gold and walls of silver and floors inlaid with precious stones. No sound was to be heard. The place seemed deserted, and Psyche drew near, awestruck at the sight of such splendor. As she hesitated on the threshold, voices sounded in her ear. She could see no one, but the words they spoke came clearly to her. The house was for her, they told her. She must enter without fear and bathe and refresh herself, that a banquet table would be spread for her. There was no one around her, but the young woman understood that these were invisible servants. While she dined, sweet music breathed around her. A great choir seemed to sing a harp, which she could only hear and not see. Throughout the day, except for the strange companionship of the voices, she was alone. But in some inexplicable way, she felt sure that with the coming of the night, her husband would be with her. And so it happened. When she felt him beside her, all her fears left her. She knew without seeing him that there was no answer or shape of terror, but the lover and husband she had longed and waited for. The next morning, the two came, brought down from the mountain by Zephyr, happy and excited. Psyche was waiting for them. It was long before the three could speak to each other. Their joy was too great to express except by tears and embraces. They did not tell her this, but they reproached her for hiding her terrible state from them, her own sisters. They had learned, they said, and knew for a fact that her husband was not a man, but the fearful serpent Apollo's oracle had declared he would be. He was kind now, no doubt, but he would certainly turn upon her some night and devour her. That night her husband was fast asleep, she must leave the bed, light the lamp, and get the knife. She must steel herself to plunge it swiftly into the body of the frightful being the light would certainly show her. No monster was revealed, but the sweetest and fairest of all creatures, at whose side the very lamp seemed to shine brighter. Some hot oil fell from the lamp upon her shoulder. She started awake. He saw the light and knew her faithlessness, and without a word she fled from her. Venus was determined to show Psyche what it meant to draw down the displeasure of a goddess. Poor Psyche, in her desperate wanderings, was trying to win the gods over to her side. She offered ardent prayers to them perpetually, but not one of them would do anything to make Venus their enemy. At last, she perceived that there was no hope for her, and she took a desperate resolve. She would go straight to Venus. She would offer herself humbly to her as her servant and try to soften her anger. Psyche, left alone, sat still and stared at the heap. Her mind was all in a maze because of the cruelty of the command. And indeed, it was of no use to start a task so manifestly impossible. But at this direful moment, she would have awakened no compassion in mortals, and immortals were speeded by the tiniest creatures of the field, the little ants, the swift runners. They cried to each other, "Come, have mercy on this poor maid, and help her diligently." At once they came, waves of them, one after another, and they labored, separating and dividing until what had been a confused mass lay all ordered, every seed with its kind. This was what Venus found when she came back, and very angry she was to see it. The next morning, she devised another task to Psyche. This time, the dangerous one. When the worn girl reached the gently flowing stream, the sheep were indeed very fierce. But if Psyche would wait until they came out of the bushes toward evening to rest beside the river, she would go into the thicket and find plenty of the golden wool hanging in the sharp briars. That was the worst task yet, as Psyche saw when she approached the waterfall. Only a winged creature could reach it. This time, her savior was an eagle, who poised his great wings beside her. But Venus kept on. One cannot but accuse her of some stupidity. The only effect of all that had happened was to make her try again. She gave Psyche a box which she was to carry to the underworld and asked Proserpina to feel with some of your beauty. She was to tell her that Venus really needed it. She was too worn out from nursing her sick son. Psyche knew now that her end was near. The young woman was ready to jump from the top of a tower when she heard a voice like a ghost. She found her guide in the tower she passed. It gave her careful directions how to get to Persephone's palace. First, through a great hole in the earth, then down to the river of death, where she must give the fair man Chiron a penny to take her across. After a lengthy descent, she reached the banks of the Acheron river, and there she met Chiron. From there, the road led straight to the palace. Cerberus, the three-headed dog, guarded the door. But if she gave him a cake, he would be friendly and let her pass. All happened, of course, as the tower had foretold. Psyche introduced herself to the queen of the underworld. Proserpina was willing to do Venus a service. And Psyche, a great encourage, bore back the box, returning far more quickly than she had gone down. Her next trial she brought upon herself through her curiosity, and still more, her vanity. She was unable to resist the temptation, which she opened the box. To her sharp disappointment, she saw nothing there. It seemed empty. A deadly languor took possession of her, and she fell into a heavy sleep. She was lying almost beside the palace, and he found her at once. In a moment, he had wiped the sleep from her eyes and put it back into the box. Then, waking her with just a prick from one of his arrows, and scolding her a little for his curiosity, he bade her take Proserpina. Then he called the full assembly of the gods and announced to all, including Venus, that Cupid and Psyche were formally married, and that he proposed to bestow immortality upon the bride. Mercury brought Psyche into the palace of the gods, and Jupiter himself gave her the ambrosia to taste, which made her immortal. This, of course, completely changed the situation, so all came to a most happy ending. Love and the soul, for what that is what Psyche means, had sought, and after sore trials, found each other, and that union could never be broken.